The mahogany boardroom table stretched before Sophia Chen like a battlefield, its polished surface reflecting the stern faces of 12 directors who had watched her grow up but never truly seen her. At 28, she possessed her father's sharp cheekbones and her mother's calculating eyes, but neither parent's respect from the people who now stared at her with barely concealed skepticism. The quarterly reports show a 15% decline in our pharmaceutical division, announced board member Harold Westbrook, his silver mustache twitching with disapproval. Perhaps it's time we discussed more experienced leadership. Sophia's fingers tightened around her Mont Blanc pen, the only outward sign of her irritation. She had graduated summa cum laude from Wharton, spent 2 years at McKinsey, and another 3 climbing the ranks at Chen Pharmaceuticals, her father's empire. Yet here she sat, dismissed as nothing more than David Chen's spoiled daughter playing at being a businesswoman. "The decline is temporary," she replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Our new Alzheimer's drug, Memorex, enters Phase 3 trials next month. Conservative projections show." "Conservative projections don't pay shareholders," interrupted Margaret Foster, the lone woman on the board beside Sophia. Her betrayal stung more than the men's condescension. "Your father built this company on results, not promises." The mention of her father sent a familiar pang through Sophia's chest. David Chen had died 6 months ago in a helicopter crash, leaving behind a pharmaceutical empire worth $3 billion and a daughter he'd groomed to inherit it all. The problem was, no one else believed she deserved it. "The board's concerns are noted," Sophia said, standing to signal the meeting's end. "I'll have updated projections on your desks by Friday." As the directors filed out, their whispered conversations floating behind them like toxic smoke, Sophia remained seated, staring at the empty chairs. This wasn't how she'd imagined her first year as CEO would unfold. In her father's final months, weakened by the cancer that would claim him, he'd spoken of legacy and responsibility, of the empire they'd built together. He'd never mentioned how exhausting it would be to prove herself worthy of her own inheritance. Her assistant Marcus knocked and entered, his usually immaculate appearance slightly disheveled. "Ms. Chen, there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent." "I'm not taking any more meetings today. It's about your father's death." The words hit her like ice water. Sophia's hand froze halfway to her coffee cup. "What did you say?" "The gentleman claims to have new information about the helicopter crash. He's insistent." 6 months. 6 months since the National Transportation Safety Board had concluded their investigation, ruling the crash an accident caused by mechanical failure. 6 months since she'd buried her father and tried to move forward. Now someone was dragging her back to that devastating day. "Send him in." The man who entered her office wore an expensive suit that couldn't quite disguise his rough edges. Late 50s, graying hair, eyes like chips of granite. He moved with the careful precision of someone accustomed to violence. "Ms. Chen, I'm Detective Ray Morrison, retired LAPD." He placed a business card on her desk. "I've been investigating your father's death as a private inquiry. The NTSB ruled it an accident." "The NTSB doesn't always see the whole picture." Morrison sat without invitation, his gaze never leaving her face. "Your father hired me 3 weeks before he died. Said he was worried about something. Someone." Sophia's mouth went dry. "That's impossible. He never mentioned. He was protecting you. Said if anything happened to him I should come to you." Morrison reached into his jacket and withdrew a manila envelope. He was right to be worried. Inside the envelope were photographs. Her father's helicopter on the tarmac, close-ups of the rotor assembly, and technical diagrams she couldn't decipher. But it was the final image that made her blood run cold. A photograph of a man in coveralls working on the helicopter's engine, his face partially obscured but unmistakably purposeful. "Sabotage," Morrison said simply. "Your father discovered someone was stealing proprietary research from Chen Pharmaceuticals, worth millions, maybe billions. Who?" The word came out as a whisper. "Someone with access. Someone trusted." Morrison leaned forward. "Someone who knew killing David Chen would throw the company into chaos, making it vulnerable to a hostile takeover." Sophia's hands trembled as she studied the photographs. Everything she'd believed about her father's death, about her grief, about her struggles as the new CEO. It was all based on a lie. He hadn't died in a random accident. He'd been murdered. Why come to me now? Why wait 6 months? Because whoever killed your father just made their move. Morrison's expression darkened. This morning, Blackstone Capital filed a $750 million lawsuit against Chen Pharmaceuticals, claiming your company stole their research for Memorex. They're demanding immediate access to all your files, all your research data. The room seemed to spin around her. Memorex was their flagship drug, the breakthrough treatment for Alzheimer's that would secure the company's future. It was also the product she'd staked her reputation on, the proof that she could lead Chen Pharmaceuticals into the next generation. That's impossible. Memorex is our proprietary research. We've been developing it for 4 years. According to their filing, Blackstone has documentation proving Chen Pharmaceuticals accessed their servers and stole critical data. They claim you personally authorized the theft. Sophia shot to her feet, her chair rolling backward into the wall. That's a lie. I know it is. But they have evidence. Forged, but convincing. Morrison stood as well, his presence filling the office with an electric tension. This isn't just about money, Ms. Chen. If this lawsuit succeeds, it will destroy your company's reputation. Your stock will crash. The board will remove you. And whoever orchestrated this will be positioned to buy Chen Pharmaceuticals for pennies on the dollar. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The board's growing hostility, the mysterious decline in certain divisions, the perfectly timed lawsuit. Someone had been planning this for months, maybe years. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Your father paid me to find the truth. I intend to honor that contract." Morrison moved toward the door, then paused. "But I'll need your help. And Ms. Chen? You need to be very careful who you trust. Your father's killer is still out there, and now you're in their way." As the door closed behind him, Sophia sank back into her chair, her mind reeling. In the span of 20 minutes, her world had been turned upside down. Her father's death was murder, her company was under attack, and somewhere in the corridors of Chen Pharmaceuticals, a killer walked free. She picked up her phone to call her head of security, then stopped. Morrison was right. She couldn't trust anyone. Not yet. Not until she knew who had betrayed her father and was now coming for her. Outside her office windows, Los Angeles sprawled in the afternoon haze, millions of people going about their lives, unaware that in this glass tower, a war had just begun. Sophia Chen had been dismissed as an unqualified heiress playing at being a CEO. But if someone thought they could destroy her father's empire and frame her for theft, they were about to discover they'd underestimated the wrong woman. She opened her laptop and began typing, her fingers flying across the keys. If they wanted a fight, she'd give them one. But first, she needed to understand exactly what she was up against. What do you think will happen next? Share your predictions in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling stories. The Chen Pharmaceuticals building hummed with the quiet efficiency of after-hours work, but Sophia felt anything but peaceful as she rode the elevator to the 32nd floor. At 11 p.m., the executive level was deserted, except for the security guards making their rounds, perfect for what she had in mind. She'd spent the afternoon researching Blackstone Capital, and what she'd found made her stomach churn. The investment firm specialized in hostile takeovers of pharmaceutical companies, particularly those in transition after leadership changes. Their pattern was always the same: identify a vulnerable target, manufacture a crisis, then swoop in with a lowball offer that desperate shareholders would accept. But Chen Pharmaceuticals shouldn't have been vulnerable. They were profitable, innovative, and, despite the board's concerns, fundamentally strong. Unless someone on the inside was feeding information to Blackstone. Sophia's keycard beeped as she entered her father's former laboratory, now converted to a secure research archive. She'd avoided this room since his death, unable to face the memories it contained. Tonight, sentiment was a luxury she couldn't afford. The lab still smelled like her father's cologne, mixed with the antiseptic scent of scientific equipment. Awards and patents lined the walls, testament to David Chen's brilliance as both a researcher and businessman. But it was the secure computer terminal in the corner that interested her now, the one connected to the company's most sensitive research databases. Her father had taught her that data never lied, only people did. If someone had accessed Memorex research to steal it, there would be digital fingerprints. The computer required biometric authentication. Sophia pressed her thumb to the scanner, then waited as the system verified her identity. A moment later, the screen flickered to life, displaying access logs for the past year. What she found made her blood run cold. According to the records, someone had accessed the Memorex files 17 times in the past 6 months, always late at night, always when the building was nearly empty. But it wasn't the frequency that shocked her. It was the user ID. Every unauthorized access showed her own credentials. "Impossible," she whispered, scrolling through the logs. The timestamps showed her accessing files at times when she'd been home, at board meetings, even during her father's funeral. Someone had cloned her digital identity and used it to steal her own company's research. But who had the technical expertise and security clearance to pull off such a sophisticated operation? A soft footstep in the hallway made her freeze. The security guards weren't due for another hour, and everyone else should have gone home. Sophia quickly downloaded the access logs to a secure drive, then shut down the computer. The footsteps grew closer, deliberate, and careful. Someone was trying to move quietly, which meant they didn't want to be discovered. Sophia's heart hammered as she searched for another exit, but the lab only had one door. She was trapped. The footsteps stopped directly outside the lab. Sophia held her breath, praying whoever it was would move on. Instead, she heard the subtle beep of a keycard being scanned. Moving quickly, she ducked behind her father's old desk just as the door opened. Through the gap between the desk and wall, she watched a figure enter the lab. Tall, lean, wearing dark clothing and moving with professional precision. The intruder went straight to the computer terminal she'd just vacated. Even in the dim light, Sophia could see it was a woman with short blonde hair and cold, calculating movements. She'd never seen her before, which meant she wasn't a Chen Pharmaceuticals employee. The woman cursed softly when she found the computer already shut down, then began examining the workstation for signs of recent use. Her movements were methodical, professional. This wasn't her first break-in. Sophia's phone buzzed with a text message, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet lab. The intruder spun toward the noise, her hand moving to something concealed beneath her jacket. For a terrifying moment, their eyes met across the darkened room. The woman's face was sharp-featured and beautiful, in a predatory way, with eyes like polished steel. This wasn't just a corporate spy. She was dangerous. "Well, well," the woman said, her voice carrying a slight accent Sophia couldn't place. "The grieving daughter, working late. How? Touching." Sophia remained crouched behind the desk, her mind racing. The woman clearly knew who she was, which suggested this wasn't a random break-in. "Who are you?" "Someone who's been very interested in your recent activities." The woman stepped closer, her hand still hovering near her concealed weapon. "You've been asking questions, Ms. Chen. Stirring up the past. That's unwise." "You killed my father," the woman smiled, a cold expression that never reached her eyes. "Your father's death was a tragic accident. The NTSB confirmed it. Unless you have evidence to suggest otherwise." The challenge in her voice was clear. She knew about Morrison, about the investigation, which meant Sophia and the detective were already being watched. "What do you want?" Sophia asked. "The same thing everyone wants. A successful business outcome. Blackstone's offer for Chen Pharmaceuticals is quite generous. You should consider accepting it." "Over my dead body. That can be arranged." The woman's smile widened. "But it would be so much simpler if you just walked away. Sell the company, take your billions, disappear to some tropical island. Live a long, quiet life." The threat was clear, but something in the woman's tone suggested she was stalling, waiting for something, or someone. Today. Sophia's blood turned to ice as she realized the truth. This wasn't just a break-in, it was a trap. The woman had been waiting for her, knowing she'd come here eventually, which meant The lab door opened again and 2 more figures entered. Men this time, both carrying weapons that gleamed dully in the dim light. Sophia recognized one of them, James Crawford, Chen Pharmaceuticals' head of security. The betrayal hit her like a physical blow. Crawford had worked for her father for 15 years. She'd trusted him with her life, and he'd sold her out. "Sorry, Sophia," Crawford said, his voice heavy with what might have been genuine regret. "Nothing personal, just business." "You bastard," she whispered. "My father trusted you." "Your father was naive. He actually thought he could change the world with his precious drugs." Crawford shook his head. "David never understood that medicine is just another commodity. Blackstone understands that." The blonde woman checked her watch impatiently. "We need to move. Security sweep starts in 15 minutes. "What about her?" Crawford gestured toward Sophia. "Tragic accident. The grieving daughter, working late, overcome by emotion." "Such a shame when people fall from windows." Sophia's mind raced, calculating distances and possibilities. She was outnumbered and outgunned, but she had one advantage. She knew this building better than anyone. Her father had brought her here as a child, showing her secret passages and maintenance routes that most employees didn't know existed. "You won't get away with this," she said, slowly rising from behind the desk. "People will ask questions." "What people?" The blonde woman laughed. "Your board of directors will be relieved. Your employees will be grateful when Blackstone saves their jobs. And your detective friend? Well, private investigators have such dangerous jobs." They were going to kill Morrison too. The thought galvanized Sophia into action. As the men moved to flank her, she lunged toward the emergency fire alarm on the wall. The piercing siren filled the lab, and emergency lights began flashing. In the chaos of noise and strobing light, Sophia rolled behind a bank of equipment and scrambled toward the maintenance panel she remembered from childhood visits. Gunshots rang out, the bullets striking metal and concrete where she'd been standing. But the panel opened at her touch, revealing a narrow service corridor that connected to the building's ventilation system. She squeezed through the opening just as Crawford reached the panel, his curses drowned out by the continuing alarm. The service corridor was cramped and dark, but it led to the building's central shaft, and from there, to freedom. As she crawled through the narrow space, Sophia's phone buzzed with another text. This one made her blood freeze. "Your detective friend is asking too many questions. Pier 19, Warehouse 7. Come alone or he dies. You have 1 hour." They had Morrison, and they were using him as bait to draw her out of hiding. Sophia closed her eyes, fighting back tears of rage and fear. In the span of 2 days, she'd lost everything. Her innocence about her father's death, her trust in her own employees, her sense of safety. But she'd also gained something: certainty. She knew who her enemies were now, and she was going to make them pay. The port of Los Angeles at midnight was a maze of shadows and industrial noise, where massive cargo ships loomed like sleeping giants against the star-filled sky. Sophia parked her Porsche 3 blocks away from Pier 19, unwilling to risk the distinctive engine sound giving away her position. She'd traded her business suit for dark jeans and a black sweater, feeling like an actress playing a role she'd never auditioned for. The secure drive containing the access logs burned like a coal in her jacket pocket. It was her only evidence, her only leverage. If Crawford and his accomplices killed her tonight, the truth about her father's murder would die with her. Her phone showed 2 missed calls from Detective Morrison's number, but she didn't trust them. Anyone could have taken his phone after capturing him. The text demanding she come to Warehouse 7 could be genuine, or it could be another trap designed to eliminate the last witnesses to their conspiracy. But she couldn't abandon Morrison, not when he'd risked his life to uncover the truth about her father's death. Warehouse 7 squatted at the end of Pier 19 like a concrete tumor, its corrugated metal walls streaked with rust and salt spray. The building had been abandoned for years, making it perfect for activities that required privacy. Sophia approached from the waterside, using shipping containers as cover while she studied the building for signs of occupation. A single light glowed in one of the upper windows, and she could see the silhouettes of at least 2 figures moving inside. No guards posted outside, which either meant they were supremely confident or this was indeed a trap. Probably both. Sophia found a maintenance ladder on the building's side and climbed to a row of grimy windows. Through the glass, she could see into the warehouse's main floor, and what she saw made her stomach clench with fear and fury. Morrison was tied to a chair in the center of the vast space, his face bloodied but his eyes alert. The blonde woman from the lab paced around him like a predator, while Crawford stood near a table covered with electronic equipment. 2 other men flanked the exits, assault rifles cradled in their arms with casual familiarity. Professional killers, just like she'd suspected. But it was the 5th person in the warehouse who made Sophia's blood turn to ice. Harold Westbrook, the board member who'd questioned her leadership that very morning. He stood apart from the others, his expensive suit incongruous in the industrial setting, checking his watch with obvious impatience. "She's late," Westbrook complained, his voice carrying clearly in the cavernous space. "Perhaps she's not coming." "She'll come," the blonde woman replied. "Grief makes people stupidly heroic." Morrison raised his head with obvious effort. "You're all insane if you think this will work. Sophia's not stupid enough to walk into an obvious trap." Crawford backhanded him casually, reopening a cut on his lip. "She's David's daughter. Same savior complex. Same inability to see the bigger picture." "The bigger picture being murder and corporate theft?" Morrison spat blood onto the concrete floor. "The bigger picture being evolution," Westbrook said smoothly. "Chen Pharmaceuticals has stagnated under traditional leadership. Blackstone will bring efficiency, streamlined operations, proper profit margins. By stealing research and killing the owner? By doing what's necessary." Westbrook's voice hardened. David was living in the past, thinking he could change the world one drug at a time. Memorex alone could be worth $50 billion in the right hands. Blackstone understands that kind of potential. Sophia pressed closer to the window, straining to hear every word. The pieces of the conspiracy were finally coming together, and the picture they formed was worse than she'd imagined. "The girl's access codes made it almost too easy," the blonde woman continued. "Child's play to clone her biometric data and create a digital trail showing she authorized the theft herself. When Blackstone's lawsuit succeeds, she'll be ruined both financially and professionally." "What about the helicopter crash?" Morrison asked. "How did you make that look like an accident?" Crawford answered with obvious pride. "Remote override of the flight control system." David never knew what hit him. The beauty of modern technology. You can kill someone from 1,000 miles away and make it look like mechanical failure. Sophia's vision blurred with tears of rage. They were discussing her father's murder like a business transaction, casual and clinical. She wanted to scream, to burst through the window and tear them apart with her bare hands. Instead, she forced herself to remain calm and think strategically. 5 armed killers against 1 pharmaceutical executive. The odds couldn't be worse. But she had advantages they didn't know about. The warehouse's layout, the element of surprise, and most importantly, they needed her alive long enough to extract information about her company's research. Her phone buzzed with a text. "Time's up. Come inside now, or your friend dies." Sophia took a deep breath and climbed down from the window. She'd gotten the confession she needed, recorded on her phone's voice memo app. Now she had to find a way to survive long enough to use it. The warehouse's main entrance was a massive sliding door, partially open to reveal the lit interior. Sophia walked through it with her hands visible, playing the role of the frightened heiress stumbling into a trap. "Ms. Chen," Westbrook greeted her with false warmth. "So good of you to join us. I was just telling our friends about your father's vision for Chen Pharmaceuticals. Quite admirable, really, if hopelessly impractical." "Let Morrison go," Sophia said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Your problem is with me." "Our problem," the blonde woman corrected, "is with anyone who threatens Blackstone's acquisition. Your detective friend has been quite persistent in his investigation." "What do you want?" Crawford stepped forward, holding a tablet computer. "Access codes to your company's central research database. The real ones. not the ones you changed after discovering our little midnight visits. So they knew she'd been in the lab, which meant they'd been watching her even more closely than she'd realized. And if I give you the codes? Then you and your friend disappear quietly, Westbrook said. New identities, offshore accounts, comfortable exile. Consider it a generous severance package. Sophia almost laughed at the absurdity. They expected her to believe they'd let witnesses to murder and corporate espionage walk away? She was desperate, not stupid. I need proof Morrison's alive first, she said, stalling for time while her mind raced through possibilities. Ray, the blonde woman called sharply. Tell your employer you're still breathing. Morrison raised his head, his eyes meeting Sophia's across the warehouse. In them, she saw something that gave her hope, intelligence, determination, and a subtle signal she almost missed. He flexed his left hand 3 times, then nodded toward the electrical panel on the nearby wall. Masmeinidien. Masmeinidien? He had a plan. I'm fine, Sophia, Morrison said loudly, but don't give them what they want. These people killed your father. They'll kill us too, no matter what promises they make. Crawford raised his hand to strike again, but Westbrook stopped him. Enough. Ms. Chen, you have 10 seconds to provide the access codes, or we start removing your friend's fingers. Sophia moved closer to the table with the electronic equipment, noting the laptop computers, communication devices, and what looked like jamming equipment designed to block cell phone signals. But it was the building's electrical panel that interested her most, the one Morrison had indicated with his subtle signal. The primary access code is Chen David 2019, she said, her hand moving slowly toward her jacket pocket. But you'll also need my biometric confirmation. Excellent. The blonde woman smiled coldly. Walk slowly to the computer terminal. Any sudden movements and… The lights went out. In the same instant, Sophia heard the distinctive crack of Morrison's chair breaking as he threw himself sideways, followed by the sharp reports of gunfire and confused shouting. She'd been expecting the darkness. Morrison's signal had told her he could reach the electrical panel's emergency shutoff, but their captors hadn't. She rolled behind the equipment table as muzzle flashes strobed through the warehouse like deadly lightning. In the chaos, she could hear Morrison moving, no longer restricted by his broken restraints. The man was tougher than he looked. Lights! Westbrook shouted. Get the damn lights back on! But Sophia was already moving, using her phone's flashlight to navigate through the warehouse's maze of equipment and debris. She'd grown up in her father's laboratories, comfortable with complex machinery and industrial spaces. This was her element now. She found what she was looking for near the building's rear wall, an old fire suppression system with manual activation. If she could trigger it, the resulting chaos might give them a chance to escape. Gunfire erupted again, closer this time. Someone had found a flashlight and was sweeping the warehouse methodically. In the moving beam, she caught a glimpse of Morrison crouched behind a shipping container, a gun in his hand that he'd taken from one of their captors. The detective met her eyes and nodded toward the exit. He was telling her to run, to save herself while he held them off. It was brave and stupid, and exactly what her father would have done. Instead, Sophia yanked the fire suppression handle. Alarms blared as high-pressure water erupted from dozens of nozzles throughout the warehouse, turning the space into a chaotic storm of noise and spray. The combination of darkness, water, and deafening alarms created perfect cover for escape. She splashed through the ankle-deep water toward Morrison's position, shouting to be heard over the noise. This way! There's a service exit! Together they ran through the flooding warehouse while gunfire sparked around them. Behind them, Sophia could hear Westbrook screaming orders that no one could follow in the chaos. They burst through the service exit into the cool night air, both gasping and soaked. But they weren't safe yet. The killers would recover quickly and pursue them through the maze of the docks. My car's 3 blocks north, Sophia panted. Mine's closer, Morrison replied, pointing toward a nondescript sedan parked behind a stack of shipping containers. And it's armored. They ran through the shadows between buildings, the sound of pursuit growing behind them. As they reached Morrison's car, Sophia heard the distinctive whine of motorcycles starting up. Their enemies were adapting quickly. Morrison's sedan roared to life, and they accelerated away from the pier, just as the first motorcycle emerged from the warehouse complex. In the rearview mirror, Sophia could see at least 3 bikes giving chase, their riders hunched low and closing fast. "Who are these people?" she gasped, checking that her seatbelt was secure. "Blackstone employs a private military contractor called Meridian Solutions," Morrison replied, taking a hard right that made the tires scream. Former Special Forces operators turned corporate enforcers. Very expensive, very discreet, very lethal. The motorcycles were gaining ground, their smaller size and maneuverability giving them an advantage in the narrow dock roads. Sophia could see the lead rider reaching for something at his belt, probably a weapon. "The freeway," she said. "If we can reach the freeway, maybe." The rear window exploded in a shower of safety glass as a bullet punched through it. Morrison cursed and swerved, trying to present a harder target while maintaining speed. They emerged from the dock complex onto the main road, the freeway entrance ramp visible ahead. But the motorcycles were still closing, and Sophia could see more vehicles, SUVs with tinted windows, joining the pursuit from side streets. This wasn't just a chase. It was a coordinated operation designed to eliminate them both. Morrison's phone rang, connected to the car's speakers. The caller ID showed Sophia's own number, which was impossible since she was sitting right next to him. "Answer it," she said grimly. "Let's hear what they have to say." Crawford's voice filled the car, calm and professional. "Detective Morrison, Ms. Chen, I trust you're both unharmed?" "What do you want, Crawford?" Sophia snarled. "To offer you one final chance at a reasonable solution. Pull over now, and this can still end quietly. Continue running, and things will become unpleasant." In the rearview mirror, one of the pursuing SUVs accelerated and rammed their rear bumper, sending Morrison's sedan sliding sideways. Only his expert driving kept them from spinning out completely. "Your answer?" Crawford pressed. Morrison looked at Sophia, his expression grim but determined. In his eyes, she saw the same stubborn refusal to surrender that had driven her father to build Chen Pharmaceuticals from nothing. "Go to hell," she said into the phone. Then Morrison cut the connection and floored the accelerator toward the freeway, where the real chase would begin. The tension is building. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and let me know in the comments which character you're rooting for. Your support helps me create more incredible stories like this one. The 405 freeway at 2 a.m. was a concrete river flowing with scattered traffic, but Sophia had never been more aware of how exposed they were. Morrison's armored sedan could absorb small arms fire, but it wasn't built for extended high-speed chases against professional operators with unlimited resources. "There," Morrison pointed toward an exit sign. "UCLA Medical Center. If we can reach the hospital, they won't risk a public firefight." But their pursuers had anticipated that strategy. As they approached the exit, 2 black SUVs merged from the on-ramp, boxing them in. The motorcycles flanked them on both sides, their riders now openly displaying automatic weapons. "They're not planning to take us alive," Sophia realized, watching the tactical precision of their enemies' movements. "Meridian doesn't usually leave witnesses," Morrison agreed. He yanked the wheel hard left, cutting across 3 lanes of traffic toward the carpool lane. Horns blared as they narrowly missed a semi-truck, but the maneuver opened up some distance from their pursuers. Sophia's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from an unknown number. "Exit Wilshire Boulevard. Underground parking garage, level B3. Come alone. A friend." "Someone's trying to help us," she said, showing Morrison the message. "Or it's another trap." He checked the mirrors again. The motorcycles were gaining ground, weaving through traffic with suicidal skill. "At this point, we don't have many options." They took the Wilshire exit at dangerous speed, tires screaming as Morrison fought to keep the sedan under control. Behind them, the pursuit vehicles followed, but their larger size and the need to avoid civilian casualties slowed them down in the dense urban environment. The underground garage was beneath a medical office building, its entrance barely visible from street level. Morrison drove down the concrete ramp into fluorescent-lit darkness, past rows of parked cars toward the deepest level. "There," Sophia pointed toward a figure standing beside a maintenance door. A woman in surgical scrubs with graying hair and an expression of barely controlled fear. Morrison parked beside her, keeping the engine running. The woman approached Sophia's window cautiously. "Dr. Elena Vasquez," she said quickly. "I worked with your father on the Memorex trials. He saved my daughter's life when the other doctors gave up hope." "What do you want?" Sophia asked, though something in the woman's manner suggested she was genuine. "To repay a debt. David came to me 2 weeks before he died, said he was worried about industrial espionage. He asked me to keep copies of the real Memorex research in a secure location." Dr. Vasquez held up a small hard drive. "This contains everything: the original formulations, trial data, proof that Chen Pharmaceuticals developed the drug independently." Sophia's heart leaped. "You can prove we didn't steal from Blackstone?" "More than that. I can prove Blackstone stole from us. Your father suspected they'd been infiltrating pharmaceutical companies for years, stealing research and then filing lawsuits to claim ownership." Dr. Vasquez glanced nervously toward the garage entrance. "But we need to move. I've arranged safe passage out of the city." The sound of engines echoed from the upper levels as their pursuers entered the garage. Morrison was already out of the car, scanning for alternate exits. "Service tunnel," Dr. Vasquez said, leading them toward the maintenance door. "Connects to the subway system. From there we can reach the airport." They followed her through a narrow concrete tunnel that smelled of dampness and neglect. Behind them, the sound of car doors slamming and shouted orders suggested their enemies had found Morrison's abandoned sedan. "How did you know where to find us?" Sophia asked as they hurried through the tunnel. "Your father gave me Detective Morrison's contact information. When I heard about the warehouse incident on the police scanner, I knew you'd need help." The tunnel opened into a subway maintenance area, where a transit authority van waited with its engine running. Dr. Vasquez led them toward it, but Morrison suddenly grabbed Sophia's arm. "Wait," he whispered. "Something's wrong." Sophia looked more carefully at the van. The driver was wearing transit authority clothing, but his posture was too alert, too military. And there was something familiar about his profile. "Crawford," she breathed. Dr. Vasquez spun toward them, but her expression had changed from helpful concern to cold calculation. "I'm sorry, Sophia, but your father's research is worth more than sentiment." The van's rear doors opened, revealing armed men in tactical gear, not transit workers, Meridian operatives. The helpful doctor had been another trap, designed to capture them when they thought they'd found salvation. Morrison drew his weapon, but there were too many targets in too small a space. "Run," he told Sophia. "The maintenance ladder leads to street level." "I'm not leaving you again. Go! Get that drive to the FBI. Make these bastards pay for what they did to your father." Sophia clutched the hard drive Dr. Vasquez had given her, assuming it actually contained the research data and wasn't another deception. Everything was lies within lies, truth mixed with betrayal, until she couldn't tell friend from enemy. Calbosby, she ran toward the maintenance ladder as gunfire erupted behind her. The narrow shaft led upward through darkness, her hands scraping against rusted metal rungs as she climbed toward the circle of streetlight above. She emerged onto a sidewalk in Westwood, gasping and disoriented. The familiar streets of her childhood seemed alien now, transformed into a battlefield where anyone could be an enemy. She had to keep moving. Morrison's sacrifice would be meaningless if she was captured now. Her phone showed 17 missed calls from board members, probably demanding explanations for the night's events. But there was one number she recognized that offered hope. Marcus, her assistant, calling from what appeared to be a secure line. "Marcus?" she answered cautiously. "Ms. Chen, thank God. Are you safe?" "For now. Where are you?" "Emergency protocols, like your father taught us. I'm at the backup facility in Pasadena. I have something you need to see." The backup facility was David Chen's most closely guarded secret, a private laboratory where he'd conducted his most sensitive research, unknown to anyone except his most trusted inner circle. If Marcus was there, it meant he'd activated the protocols David had established for exactly this kind of corporate emergency. "I'll be there in an hour," Sophia said. Be careful. The news is reporting you as a fugitive wanted for questioning in connection with Detective Morrison's disappearance. Sophia's blood ran cold. They were controlling the narrative now, painting her as the criminal, while they positioned themselves as the victims. By morning, every law enforcement agency in California would be looking for her. She stole a car, something she'd never imagined herself doing, and drove through the empty streets toward Pasadena, taking side roads and avoiding traffic cameras. The hard drive Dr. Vasquez had given her sat on the passenger seat like an unexploded bomb. It might contain the evidence to clear her name, or it might be another trap designed to incriminate her further. The backup facility was hidden in an industrial complex, disguised as a medical waste processing plant. Sophia's biometric scan granted her access to the underground levels, where she found Marcus waiting with banks of computer equipment and research data that represented decades of her father's work. "Show me," she said without preamble. Marcus pulled up files on the main screen. Financial records, communication logs, personnel data. "I've been analyzing the security breaches. The pattern goes back 3 years, always targeting our most promising research projects." Who had access? That's the problem. The security protocols show authorized access, but the biometric data doesn't match. Someone's been spoofing identity credentials for years. Sophia inserted Dr. Vasquez's hard drive into a secure terminal. The files it contained made her gasp. Not research data, but financial records showing payments from Blackstone Capital to dozens of pharmaceutical employees across multiple companies. It's a network, she realized. They've been infiltrating the entire industry. But it was the final file that made her heart stop. Video footage from her father's private laboratory, time-stamped 3 weeks before his death, showing him in conversation with someone whose face was obscured by shadows. "I know you're stealing from me," David Chen's voice said clearly. "The question is whether you're doing it for money, or because you actually believe Blackstone's propaganda about efficient resource allocation." The shadowy figure stepped forward, and Sophia's world collapsed. It was her mother. Dr. Catherine Liu Chen, renowned biochemist and David Chen's widow, had been selling her husband's research to his competitors for years. "You always were too idealistic, David." Catherine's voice was cold, devoid of the warmth Sophia remembered from childhood. "Memorex could save millions of lives, but only if it reaches the market efficiently. Blackstone understands that. By stealing intellectual property and murdering researchers who won't cooperate? By doing what's necessary. Chen Pharmaceuticals has become complacent under your leadership. It needs new direction." "And our daughter? What happens to Sophia when Blackstone takes over?" Catherine's laugh was bitter. "Sophia will adapt. She's stronger than you think. Stronger than you." The video ended, leaving Sophia staring at the screen in shock. Her mother, the woman who'd comforted her through her father's death, who'd supported her appointment as CEO, who'd seemed to grieve as deeply as anyone, had been the architect of his murder. "Miss Chen?" Marcus's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Are you all right?" Sophia couldn't answer. The betrayal was too enormous, too complete. Everything she'd believed about her family, her company, her life, had been built on lies. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed her mother's number. With trembling hands, Sophia answered. "Hello, darling." Catherine's voice was warm and concerned, the perfect performance of a worried mother. "I've been so frightened. The news says you're in trouble." "Where are you?" "I know," Sophia whispered. A pause. Then Catherine's voice changed, becoming cold and businesslike. "I wondered when you'd figure it out. You always were clever, just like your father." "Why?" "Because David was going to destroy everything we'd built. His precious ethics, his commitment to affordable medicine. It would have bankrupted us within 5 years. Blackstone offered a better way forward. You killed him. I saved his legacy. Under Blackstone's management, Chen Pharmaceuticals will help millions more people than David ever could have alone." Sophia closed her eyes, fighting back tears of rage and grief. "What do you want from me?" "Come home, Sophia. Let's discuss this like civilized people. The Blackstone offer is generous. You'll retain a significant stake in the company, plus a seat on the board. You can still be part of your father's vision. His vision didn't include murder. His vision didn't include surviving in the modern pharmaceutical industry. Catherine's voice hardened. You have 1 hour to return home. After that, I can't guarantee your safety. Meridian Solutions has very specific instructions regarding loose ends. The line went dead, leaving Sophia alone with the weight of impossible choices. Her mother was giving her one last chance to surrender, to become complicit in her father's murder in exchange for survival. But David Chen hadn't raised a daughter who compromised with killers. Marcus, she said, her voice steadying with resolve. Contact every journalist, every government agency, every law enforcement contact we have. Send them everything. The financial records, the security logs, the video confession. Make sure copies go to the FBI, the SEC, and the district attorney's office. What about you? Sophia checked her watch. Dawn was breaking over Los Angeles, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Her father had always loved sunrises, said they reminded him that every day offered the chance to save another life. I'm going home, she said, to finish what my father started. The Chen family estate in Beverly Hills had always been Sophia's sanctuary, but as she drove through the gates at dawn, it felt more like entering a fortress controlled by enemy forces. The sprawling Mediterranean-style mansion sat on 3 acres of manicured gardens, its terracotta roof gleaming in the morning light, beautiful, peaceful, and completely deceptive. Sophia parked her stolen car beside her mother's white Mercedes, noting the 3 black SUVs that definitely hadn't been there the day before. Meridian operatives, no doubt, positioned to ensure this final confrontation ended in Blackstone's favor. She'd spent the drive from Pasadena preparing for this moment, knowing it would likely be her last. Marcus had confirmed that all the evidence was safely transmitted to law enforcement agencies, but it would take time for investigations to begin, warrants to be issued, arrests to be made. Time Sophia probably didn't have. But she refused to run anymore. Her father had built Chen Pharmaceuticals to help people, and she wouldn't let his killers destroy that legacy without a fight. The front door opened before she could ring the bell. Catherine Liu Chen stood in the doorway, impeccably dressed in a navy business suit despite the early hour. At 53, she remained strikingly beautiful, with the kind of understated elegance that made her equally at home in research laboratories and boardrooms. Looking at her now, Sophia searched for signs of the woman who'd comforted her through childhood nightmares and celebrated her achievements. Instead, she saw only cold calculation in eyes that had once been warm with maternal love. Sophia, darling, you look terrible. Catherine's voice carried genuine concern, as if she hadn't spent the night orchestrating her daughter's murder. Come in. We have so much to discuss. The living room had been transformed into an impromptu command center. Laptops and communication equipment covered the antique coffee table, while maps of Los Angeles were spread across surfaces that had once held family photographs. 2 men in expensive suits stood near the windows, clearly Blackstone executives rather than Meridian operatives. But it was the figure rising from her father's favorite armchair that made Sophia's blood boil with fresh rage. Harold Westbrook smiled at her with grandfatherly warmth, as if he hadn't been planning her execution just hours earlier. My dear girl, I'm so relieved you're safe. When we heard about the warehouse incident, we feared the worst. Where's Detective Morrison? Sophia demanded. Receiving medical attention, Catherine replied smoothly. He was injured during the unfortunate misunderstanding at the docks. Such a dedicated man, but prone to jumping to conclusions. The lie was delivered with perfect sincerity, but Sophia knew Morrison was probably dead. Another life sacrificed for Blackstone's corporate ambitions. Let's dispense with the pretense, she said. I know about the industrial espionage, the forged evidence, the murder conspiracy. I know you've been selling my father's research for years. Selling is such an ugly word, one of the Blackstone executives interjected. He was younger than Westbrook, with the lean build and predatory smile of a corporate raider. We prefer to think of it as optimizing resource allocation. By murdering the researchers? By removing obstacles to progress. The executive's smile never wavered. Your father was brilliant but naive. He actually believed he could change the world one patient at a time. We think bigger. Catherine moved to the bar and poured herself coffee, her movements elegant and controlled. David never understood that good intentions don't guarantee good outcomes. Memorex could help millions of Alzheimer's patients, but only if it reaches the market efficiently. Under his leadership, it would have taken years to navigate FDA approvals and insurance negotiations. Thousands would have died waiting. So you decided to steal it? We decided to accelerate the process. Blackstone has the resources and political connections to fast-track Memorex to market. More people helped? Faster results, greater profits for everyone involved? The twisted logic was seductive in its simplicity, and Sophia could see how her mother had rationalized betraying everything David Chen had stood for. But there was one flaw in their reasoning that they couldn't acknowledge. Except Memorex doesn't work. The room fell silent. Westbrook's smile faltered, and the Blackstone executives exchanged worried glances. Only Catherine remained composed, though Sophia detected a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. That's impossible, Catherine said. The trial data clearly shows. The trial data you stole was from early phase 2 testing. The patients showed initial improvement, but the effects were temporary. Sophia had memorized every detail of her father's research during her drive to the estate. Long-term exposure to Memorex causes progressive neural damage. Dad discovered it 3 months before he died. The revelation hit the room like a shockwave. Westbrook was the first to recover, his corporate instincts overriding his shock. You're lying, trying to devalue the research to protect your company. Am I? Sophia pulled out her phone and showed them a video file, her father's final research notes, recorded just days before his death. See for yourself. David Chen's voice filled the room, tired but determined. Personal log, research day 847. Memorex trial suspended immediately. Long-term cognitive enhancement, impossible with current formulation. Neural pathways show signs of accelerated degradation after 6 months of treatment. Back to the drawing board. The silence that followed was deafening. Sophia watched as the enormity of their mistake sank in. They'd murdered David Chen, destroyed families, and orchestrated a massive corporate fraud, all for a drug that would ultimately harm the very patients they claimed to want to help. That can't be right, the younger Blackstone executive stammered. We've invested hundreds of millions based on the projected revenue from Memorex. Then you've invested in a worthless product, Sophia said coldly. My father died trying to prevent a dangerous drug from reaching the market. You killed him to ensure it would. Catherine set down her coffee cup with shaking hands. For the first time since Sophia had arrived, her mother's perfect composure was cracking. But the early trials, the improvement in cognitive function, was real but temporary. The neural enhancement comes at the cost of long-term brain damage. Dad was working on a safer formulation when you had him killed. Westbrook pulled out his phone, probably to contact Blackstone's leadership. The conversation would be interesting, explaining to investors that they'd committed multiple felonies to acquire a product that was not only worthless, but potentially catastrophic to their company's reputation. But it was Catherine's reaction that broke Sophia's heart. Her mother sank into a chair, her face pale with the realization of what she'd done. She hadn't just betrayed her husband for money, she'd betrayed him for nothing. This changes everything, the younger Blackstone executive said, pacing frantically. If word gets out about Memorex's problems, our stock will crash, the lawsuits alone will bankrupt us. Which is why it won't get out, Westbrook replied, his voice hardening with resolve. We contain this information permanently. Sophia had been expecting this moment. With their corporate strategy in ruins, and their investment worthless, Blackstone would focus on damage control. And the most dangerous loose end in the room was David Chen's daughter. Kill me, and the story goes public automatically, she said. I've arranged for everything to be released if I don't check in every 12 hours. Bluffing, Westbrook dismissed. You're too much like your father, too honorable to risk innocent lives with mass media exposure. Try me. The standoff stretched taut between them, predator and prey circling each other with deadly intent. Sophia could see Westbrook calculating odds, weighing risks and potential outcomes with the cold precision of a corporate strategist. It was Catherine who broke the silence. Stop. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it carried absolute authority. Just stop. All of this. David is dead. Morrison is probably dead. How many more people have to die for a drug that doesn't even work? Mother. No, Sophia, I won't let them hurt you too. Catherine stood slowly, her composure returning but transformed into something harder, more determined. Gentlemen, I believe our partnership has run its course. Westbrook's eyes narrowed. Catherine, don't do anything rash. We can still salvage this situation. By murdering my daughter? By covering up a medical disaster that could kill thousands of patients? Catherine laughed bitterly. I may be a traitor and a killer, but I'm not a monster. The Blackstone executives exchanged glances, and Sophia realized with growing alarm that her mother had just signed both their death warrants. Westbrook was already reaching for his phone, probably to summon the Meridian operatives waiting outside, but Catherine was faster. The gun appeared in her hand as if by magic, a small pistol that had been concealed in her jacket. Her aim was steady, professional, trained on Westbrook's chest. Step away from the phone, Harold. Catherine, be reasonable. I've been reasonable for 3 years. Look where it got us. Her voice was ice cold now, every trace of warmth extinguished. Sophia, there's a panic room behind the bookshelf. The combination is your father's birthday. I'm not leaving you. Go. Someone has to survive to tell the truth about David's work. Sophia hesitated, torn between self-preservation and loyalty to the woman who'd raised her and betrayed everything she'd once held dear. But the sound of boots on the front porch made the decision for her. The Meridian operatives were coming. Sophia Chen. She ran toward the bookshelf as gunfire erupted in the living room. The panic room's door was concealed behind a false wall of leather-bound volumes, opening to reveal a small but well-equipped safe room with communication equipment and supplies. Through the room's monitors, she could see the battle raging in her childhood home. Catherine moved with deadly precision, using her knowledge of the house's layout to stay ahead of the armed men hunting her. But she was outnumbered and outgunned, trading her life to buy Sophia precious minutes. Sophia activated the communication system and began broadcasting on emergency frequencies, sending out everything: the research data, the financial records, the evidence of murder and corporate fraud. If she was going to die in this room, she'd make sure the truth died with her. But rescue came from an unexpected source. The front door exploded inward as federal agents poured into the house, their tactical gear and weapons vastly superior to anything Meridian could field. The gunfire ceased abruptly, replaced by shouted commands and the sounds of arrest. FBI, everyone on the ground. Through the monitors, Sophia watched as Westbrook and the Blackstone executives were handcuffed and led away. The Meridian operatives who'd survived the firefight surrendered without resistance. Professional soldiers knew when they were beaten, but there was no sign of Catherine. Sophia emerged from the panic room to find her childhood home transformed into a crime scene, its elegant rooms marked by bullet holes and bloodstains. FBI agents were collecting evidence and documenting the damage, their efficient movements a stark contrast to the violence that had preceded them. Ms. Chen? A woman in a FBI windbreaker approached her, showing identification. Agent Sarah Martinez, are you injured? I'm fine. Where's my mother? Agent Martinez's expression was compassionate but professional. She's receiving medical attention. She was wounded in the firefight, but she'll survive to stand trial. Sophia felt an unexpected surge of relief. Whatever Catherine had done, whatever crimes she'd committed, she was still Sophia's mother. The woman who'd sung lullabies and bandaged scraped knees deserved the chance to face justice rather than dying in a gunfight. Detective Morrison? Alive. In critical condition, but the doctors expect a full recovery. The weight of the past 24 hours finally caught up with Sophia, and she sank into her father's armchair, the same chair where Westbrook had sat while planning her death. Her legs wouldn't support her anymore, and her hands shook with delayed shock and exhaustion. The Memorex research, she said weakly. It's dangerous. The long-term effects. We have your transmission, Agent Martinez assured her. The FDA has been notified. The drug will never reach the market. Sophia closed her eyes, feeling her father's presence in the familiar room. David Chen had died trying to protect people from a dangerous drug, and now his mission was finally complete. His murderers were in custody, his research was safe, and his daughter had survived to ensure the truth was told. But the victory felt hollow, tainted by the cost in blood and betrayal. 3 months later, Sophia stood in the same boardroom where her leadership had been questioned, but everything else had changed. The mahogany table was surrounded by new faces: federal prosecutors, ethics investigators, and interim board members appointed by the court during Chen Pharmaceuticals' restructuring. The Blackstone Capital conspiracy had unraveled spectacularly once the FBI began pulling threads. 17 companies had been infiltrated, dozens of researchers had been murdered or intimidated, and billions of dollars in intellectual property had been stolen. The scandal dominated headlines for weeks, sending shockwaves through the entire pharmaceutical industry. Harold Westbrook was facing life in prison for conspiracy to commit murder. The Blackstone executives had turned state's evidence in exchange for reduced sentences, providing details of the company's criminal network that implicated politicians, regulators, and corporate leaders across multiple countries. But it was Catherine's testimony that had been the most devastating. Sitting in the courtroom during her mother's confession, Sophia had listened as Catherine detailed 3 years of systematic betrayal, selling research data, providing access codes, and finally arranging David Chen's murder when he discovered the truth. Her voice had been steady, professional, stripped of all emotion as she described, destroying the man she'd once loved. The judge had sentenced Catherine to 25 years in federal prison, noting her cooperation with authorities, but emphasizing the severity of her crimes. Sophia had visited her once in the federal facility outside Los Angeles, a sterile concrete building that seemed designed to crush hope. "I don't expect forgiveness," Catherine had said through the reinforced glass. "I just want you to know that I never intended for it to go this far. When David started investigating the leaks, I panicked. I thought if I could just buy time, find a way to make him understand." Understand what? That murdering researchers was acceptable if it increased profit margins. Understand that the world had changed, that idealism wasn't enough anymore. Catherine's voice had been barely audible. "I was wrong about everything." Sophia hadn't responded. There was nothing left to say between them. No words that could bridge the chasm of betrayal and blood. Catherine Liu Chen had been a brilliant scientist and a loving mother, but she'd also been a traitor and a killer. Both things were true, and both would define her legacy. Now, sitting in the reconstructed boardroom, Sophia faced a different kind of challenge. Chen Pharmaceuticals had survived the scandal, but barely. Stock prices had crashed when the news broke, lawsuits were pending from multiple directions, and investor confidence had evaporated overnight. The federal prosecutors were offering her a deal: complete cooperation with ongoing investigations, explained Assistant U.S. Attorney Rebecca Cross, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who'd made her reputation prosecuting corporate crimes. Access to all research data, personnel files, and financial records. In exchange, Chen Pharmaceuticals receives immunity from prosecution and maintains its operating licenses. What about the lawsuits? Civil matters are separate from criminal proceedings, but your cooperation will be noted favorably by the courts. Sophia studied the agreement, knowing it represented both salvation and surrender. Accepting the deal would save her father's company, but would also mean years of federal oversight, with every decision scrutinized by government bureaucrats who'd never run a business or developed a life-saving drug. "There's another option," said Dr. James Park, the interim CEO the court had appointed during the investigation. He was a respected researcher and administrator, someone David Chen had mentored early in his career. "Meridian Pharmaceuticals has made an offer to acquire Chen's research portfolio. It's generous, enough to pay off the lawsuits and leave you with a substantial settlement." "Absolutely not." Sophia's voice was sharp with anger. "My father didn't build this company to be carved up and sold for parts. Your father built this company to help people," Dr. Park replied gently. "Meridian has the resources to continue that mission. Your resources are limited." It was true. Between the legal costs, the stock collapse, and the ongoing investigations, Chen Pharmaceuticals was hemorrhaging money faster than she could raise it. The vultures were circling, waiting for the company to weaken enough for a hostile takeover. But there was a third option, one that none of the suits around the table had considered. "I want to make a counter-proposal," Sophia said, standing and moving to the windows that overlooked downtown Los Angeles. The city sprawled beneath her like a circuit board, millions of lights representing millions of lives, potential patients who needed the medicines her father had dedicated his life to developing. "I'm listening," Attorney Cross said cautiously. "Chen Pharmaceuticals restructures as a public benefit corporation. We maintain our research mission but operate under enhanced transparency requirements. Every drug we develop, every trial we conduct, every decision we make is subject to public oversight." The room erupted in protest from the board members and prosecutors alike. Public benefit corporations were rare in the pharmaceutical industry, with their legal requirement to balance profit with social good creating complications that most companies avoided. "The shareholders will never approve that," Dr. Park objected. "The profit margins are significantly lower than traditional corporate structures. The current shareholders are mostly hedge funds and investment firms who bought in during the crash," Sophia replied. "They're looking for quick profits, not long-term value. We'll offer them a buyout at current market prices." "With what money?" Attorney Cross asked. "Your liquid assets were frozen during the investigation." Sophia turned back to face the room, her expression calm but determined. "With the insurance settlement from my father's death, $50 million that I never wanted and never touched." The silence that followed was profound. Using her father's life insurance to save his company had a poetic justice that even the cynical prosecutors couldn't ignore. "It's not enough," Dr. Park said finally. $50 million won't cover the restructuring costs, the legal settlements, and the ongoing operations. Then we find partners who share our vision." Sophia had been planning this moment for weeks, gaming out every possible scenario. Universities, research hospitals, nonprofit organizations. People who understand that medicine is about healing, not just profit. "And if it fails?" Attorney Cross pressed. "If the company can't survive under those constraints, then at least it will fail honorably. My father would rather see Chen Pharmaceuticals close than become another corporate parasite feeding on human suffering." The debate continued for hours, with lawyers and accountants raising objections and complications. But slowly, grudgingly, the framework of a deal began to emerge. Chen Pharmaceuticals would restructure, accept federal oversight, and operate under the enhanced transparency requirements of a public benefit corporation. It wasn't the ending anyone had expected, but it was the one David Chen would have chosen. 6 months later, Sophia stood in a new laboratory in Pasadena, watching researchers work on the next generation of Alzheimer's treatments. The space was smaller than the corporate facility they'd lost, the equipment older, the budgets tighter, but the energy was different, purposeful rather than profitable, driven by mission rather than margins. Dr. Elena Vasquez approached with a tablet showing their latest test results. Despite her role in the Blackstone conspiracy, Vasquez had cooperated fully with the investigation, and her genuine remorse had earned her a reduced sentence and the chance to continue her research under supervised probation. "The modified compound shows promise," she reported. "Early trials suggest we can achieve cognitive enhancement without the neural damage that plagued Memorex. Timeframe for human trials? 2 years. Maybe 3. We're being extra cautious with the safety protocols?" Sophia nodded approvingly. Under the old corporate structure, there would have been pressure to rush the trials, to get the drug to market before competitors could develop alternatives. Now, they had the luxury of patience, the chance to do things right rather than fast. Detective Morrison joined them, still moving carefully as he recovered from his injuries. The former LAPD investigator had become Chen Pharmaceuticals' head of security, bringing a unique perspective to protecting both research and researchers. "Any word from the attorneys?" Sophia asked. "The last of the civil suits was settled this morning. We're officially clear of legal liabilities." Morrison smiled grimly. "Of course, we're also officially broke, but free." Sophia gazed around the bustling laboratory, watching scientists work with the dedication her father had always inspired. Sometimes freedom is worth more than money. Her phone buzzed with a message from Marcus, now serving as Chief Operating Officer in their streamlined organization. A documentary crew wanted to interview her about the Blackstone scandal, the third such request this week. She declined, as she had all the others. The story didn't need her commentary. The truth spoke for itself in court records and congressional testimony. David Chen's legacy wasn't in the headlines or the corporate drama, but in the quiet work of developing medicines that could ease human suffering. That evening, Sophia drove to the cemetery where her father was buried. The headstone was simple granite, engraved with his name, dates, and a single line, "He saved lives." She placed fresh flowers on the grave, white lilies, his favorite, and sat on the bench she'd donated for families who needed a place to remember. "We did it, Dad," she said quietly. "Chen Pharmaceuticals is clean, the research is safe, and we're going to find a cure for Alzheimer's that actually works." The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, the same colors that had filled her office windows during those first terrible days when her world collapsed around her. But this time, the light felt like promise rather than endings. A year ago, Sophia Chen had been dismissed as an unqualified heiress playing at being a CEO. She'd been underestimated, betrayed, and nearly killed by people who thought her father's idealism had died with him. They were wrong. The pharmaceutical industry was still corrupt, still driven by profit over patience. But in one laboratory in Pasadena, a small group of researchers was proving that another way was possible. They were developing drugs to heal rather than enrich, conducting trials to help rather than hurry, building a company that measured success in lives saved rather than dollars earned. It was slow work, difficult work, often thankless work. But it was the work David Chen had started, and his daughter would finish it. As the stars appeared overhead, Sophia made a silent promise to the man who'd taught her that business could be a force for good in the world. Chen Pharmaceuticals would never again compromise its mission for profit, never again put shareholders above patients, never again become the kind of corporation that measured worth in quarterly earnings rather than human dignity. Some called it naive idealism. Sophia called it her father's revenge, and as she walked back to her car, she was smiling. Harold Westbrook died in federal prison during his third year of incarceration, apparently from natural causes, though some suspected suicide. His death marked the end of an era in pharmaceutical corruption, but Sophia knew it wouldn't be the last such conspiracy. Greed and power created their own incentives, regardless of legal consequences. But for every Westbrook who fell, there were researchers like Dr. Elena Vasquez, who chose redemption over profit. For every Blackstone capital that collapsed in scandal, there were alliance members proving that ethical business could thrive. The industry was changing, slowly but steadily, one company at a time. On the 5th anniversary of her father's death, Sophia returned to the cemetery with news she knew would have made David Chen proud. CP-247 had received FDA approval, becoming the first Alzheimer's treatment developed under full transparency protocols. The drug would be available at cost to patients worldwide, with profits reinvested in research for other neurological conditions. "We kept our promise, Dad," she said, placing fresh lilies on his grave. "Your company survived. Your mission continues. And your daughter learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to become the people who hurt you." The pharmaceutical industry still had corruption, still prioritized profits over patients in too many boardrooms. But it also had the Ethical Pharmaceuticals Alliance, now comprising 47 companies across 12 countries. It had transparency protocols that were becoming industry standards, and it had proof that David Chen's idealistic vision wasn't naive. It was revolutionary. As Sophia walked back to her car, her phone buzzed with a message from her research team. Early trials for their Parkinson's treatment were showing remarkable promise. Another disease that might be conquered, another group of patients who might be helped, another step toward the world her father had dreamed of building. She drove back to the laboratory in Pasadena, where scientists worked late into the evening, driven not by stock options or bonus structures, but by the simple belief that their work could ease human suffering. It wasn't the empire David Chen had originally built, but it was something better, a legacy that would outlast any corporate structure and inspire generations of researchers to come. In the end, that was Sophia Chen's true victory. Not surviving the conspiracy that killed her father, not rebuilding the company that bore his name, but proving that his values could thrive in a world that had tried to destroy them. The heiress who had once been dismissed as unqualified had become something her enemies never expected, a leader who measured success not in dollars, but in lives saved. And that was the most thrilling ending of all.